You know, there really is nothing quite like retro video game collecting. Just the sight of seeing all those plastic cases lining the shelves full of rare titles and games you missed out on when you were a kid. There really is nothing quite like it. And if I had to describe this hobby in one word, that word would be fun. Why are video games so expensive? Why do I live in a world where Lollipop Chainsaw is $60? Okay, let's be real here for a moment. While collecting rare and retro video games can be a fun pastime, it's also probably one of the most expensive hobbies you can do next to meth. How do you inject this? And that can be for a number of reasons. With the physical preservation of games dying out more and more every year, and game companies not giving us ways to play their classic games, we have no choice but to be left to the whims of marketplace websites. And that experience can look like paying for games that have doubled or tripled in price point, refreshing for hours on websites hoping you'll land a good deal, or live by the flag and be shunned by society. Can you guess which one I am? Either way, if you want something obscure or popular, be prepared to either offer up your firstborn or do some sketchy back alley blood oath with a demon. I regret nothing. I'm personally partial to the PlayStation 2's library of games, not only because it's where some of the best series in gaming got their start, but also because at the time, this was the console for horror games. So a younger, more naive me said, sure, let's start collecting retro video games. How bad could it be? And sure enough, I found out how bad it was when I started collecting the Silent Hill games. There were so many good titles I missed out on. Silent Hill, Fatal Frame, Siren, the list goes on. If you're watching this video and you're somebody who wants to start collecting retro horror games, I have some advice for you. Run. I'm not exaggerating here. Some of these games are ludicrously expensive, and if you don't believe me, here are some examples. The Silent Hill games can easily go for between the $60 to mid $100 range. Want the Fatal Frame series? Well, you might have a fatal heart attack after seeing these prices. Or how about Michigan, Report from Hell? $700? Okay, look, you don't need to buy this game. I'll just report from hell for you myself. Hi, Hewie here, live from Michigan reporting from hell. Here to ask one question. Why? There's lots of other games I didn't mention, but you get the point. But out of all the games listed, if you dive deep enough into the PS2 horror rabbit hole, you'll learn that no games are as rare or expensive as the big three: Rule of Rose, Kuon, and Haunting Ground. All elusive games in their own right that are near impossible to come across or own due to reasons such as being surrounded in controversy, limited copies being made, never being released outside of other countries, or lower than expected sales that led to production being cancelled. And you have to admit, as a collector, the thought of owning one of the rarest games in a console library is almost too enticing. So what did I do? Spent $200 on Haunting Ground because I'm a weak bitch and caved into the urges. Look, I don't care who you are, no game is worth spending this much money on. And believe it or not, this was actually a good deal compared to other prices I've seen. I was just too curious about this game, and there was just too much mystery surrounding it for me to not buy it. Like, why is it expensive as it is? Why didn't it do as well as Capcom wanted? What made it so controversial? And that's what we're taking a look at today. So, let's see if my purchase is justifiable, and if I can get off the IRS's hit list when I take a look at Haunting Ground. Haunting Ground, also known as Demento in Japan, is another entry in the survival horror genre developed by Capcom and released in April of 2005, just a few months after the huge success that was Resident Evil 4. Despite Capcom being trailblazers for the horror genre due to the Resident Evil franchise, Haunting Ground is a very different kind of horror game and not what you would normally expect from this company. Instead of your typical fending off hordes of zombies with an arsenal of weapons, you'll solve puzzles, explore levels, and outrun and hide from your pursuers all alongside your canine companion. You see, while not a direct sequel, this game is seen as a spiritual successor to the Clock Tower series, and even plays very similarly. Due to their last game, Clock Tower 3, not meeting expectations and receiving mixed or average scores, this was the Clock Tower team's final breath in what was a long-running horror series. And unfortunately, Haunting Ground met the same fate as Clock Tower 3, where it was met with mixed reviews and didn't gain enough of a following to warrant producing more copies. So because of this, the game became very limited and very hard to find. So let's see why people thought this game was so average and set the tone for this game by checking the back of the box. Fear. Oh! Panic. Jesus! Terror. Oh! Hey, that's not terrifying. It's a cat. You're lost in an eerie castle. You're being chased. There is nowhere to run. Your only hope for survival lies in the one place you'd least expect. My ass. Okay, let's actually start this now. Okay, off the bat, I just need to say, that's probably the most adorable splash screen I've ever seen. The opening cutscene is this really artful trailer cinematic that takes place in this bright red hallway with her main character walking with nothing on but a sheet. The cutscene flashes between shots of her and shots of blood running down her body. And it's You really thought I was gonna let you see that? You disgust me. Upon starting up the game, an opening cutscene plays zooming into the basement of a castle that shows this hideous troll-looking figure cutting up some meat. Dear God, I'd die happy if you'd never look at me like that again. The scene then swaps over to Fiona trapped in a cage, and Mr. Trollman decides to touch her with his grubby troll fingers, but before that can happen, lightning strikes and scares him off. Hang on, wait a minute. An ogre keeping a woman named Fiona trapped in a cage. What kind of twisted version of Shrek is this? With the cage somehow now unlocked, Fiona lets herself out, but before she can leave, she's startled again, but this time by a dog who jumps over her and makes a break for the exit, leaving nothing behind but a collar that says, Hewie. With the exit in sight, Fiona makes her way upstairs and we can finally begin the game. So really quickly, I just have to comment, I absolutely love the playable part of the opening for this game. You'll have to wander around in silence, having no idea where you are or why you were kidnapped, and the only thing to guide you is this mysterious towering castle. It really does a good job of setting the tone for this game. After making her way upstairs, Fiona finds this really modern looking bedroom, complete with a bed, a fireplace, and this really eerie painting of an old man. But before she can try to explore the castle, a young woman who seems to be the butler of this place appears behind her. But something is off about her.
I've gathered some clothes for you.
Oh, thank you? Hoping to get some kind of explanation, Fiona tries to ask this woman about where she is, but instead of answering her questions, she just ignores everything she says and talks to the painting on the wall.
Yes, master. We will keep her here for a while. I will make sure she stays comfortable.
Before she can respond, Fiona then gets a flashback to some mysterious figure appearing into a car window. Mr. X? We can then change into the clothes that were left out for us, which plays a cutscene that shows some peeping Tom watching us. Great. It's one of those castles. After this, we're left to wander the castle and are given the controls. Despite not being able to kill enemies like other horror games, they don't make Fiona entirely weak and give her a few ways she can fight back. For example, pressing the square button makes Fiona kick enemies to stun them temporarily. This can also be used to break open weak walls and barriers or break open pots to obtain items. Upon equipping certain items, triangle can be used to throw objects or place them on the ground. L1 is used to crouch, which is useful in a pinch if you need to hide from enemy pursuers. And R1 can be used to sidestep, which is great for dodging enemies while they're charging at you. With all that in mind, we can finally go ahead and start exploring. We open some doors, check some rooms, but it isn't long until we have our first terrifying encounter. You don't know what's coming, but you hear this unsettling noise at the end of the hallway. And then this happens. You're met with this giant hulking ogre-looking guy we saw in the first cutscene earlier, whose name is Debilitas. But just like the butler from earlier, something seems off about him. Like he's not fully there. It's almost like he has the mind of a child and makes these infant noises. Based on what we just saw, we can only assume his old doll isn't good enough for him and now he's found a new doll to play with. During this part, you're chased down the hallway by this thing while some really intense music plays. Fiona gets back to her room and slams the door, when we're given a brief tutorial on how to hide from enemies that chase you. When you come across a potential hiding spot while running away, a dialog box will appear over Fiona's head, indicating that you can use it for cover by pressing the circle button. And moments like these can be absolutely terrifying, especially when you see the enemies stand in front of or walk past where you're hiding as they audibly call your name.
Where is you?
And sometimes this doesn't even work and they can pull you out of where you're hiding. After he gives up and leaves, we can continue exploring the castle. This involves some puzzle solving, like trying to move the stone golem out of the way by inserting a plate with the correct name. I wonder what happens if I do this. Yes, I just did an insert dong joke, and yes, it was worth it. Also, is it just me, or is this thing the most terrifying gyroid you've ever seen? Anyways, after that, we enter a cutscene of Fiona entering a room while a piano is playing. She tries to grab a key off the table, but we're quickly discovered and shown something truly disturbing.
Ah, Fiona. I see you finally awakened. There's something that I've wanted to show you for quite some time. Pull away that sheet behind you. Beautiful, isn't it? That, my dear, is what you will become in the future. Go ahead. You may touch it.
What in God's name is that? What is that? After taking the key and unlocking the door in the garden section, we're chased down once again by Debilitas, only this time, a mysterious hooded man commands him to stop, to which he obeys. The man introduces himself as Ricardo, who is the keeper of the castle. It's through this exchange that he apologizes and reveals that Fiona's parents died in a car crash, leaving her the remaining heir to this castle. With this being understandably too much information to handle, Fiona passes out and wakes back up in the bedroom from earlier. She wakes up from a bad dream, and looks out the window to see the dog from earlier has been captured and tied up to a tree. Being the kind-hearted person she is, Fiona runs outside and unties the dog, setting him free. She then heads back upstairs to her room, where she's greeted with the last thing she wanted to see, our big creepy stalker, Debilitas. With nowhere to run, he corners Fiona, but before anything happens, the dog we rescued moments ago comes to our rescue, biting Debilitas' hand and causing him to flee. And it's from this point on where we can truly start the game. With our new lovable companion at her side, we finally have a way to defend ourselves and explore the castle more in depth. I honestly really like the way you can control both characters in this game. It works in a twin-stick style where the left stick and action buttons are used to control Fiona, while the right stick is used to give commands to Hewie. For example, tilting up on the thumbstick will order Hewie to attack your pursuer, and the more you press it, the longer Hewie will continue to attack. And when an enemy isn't nearby, tilting up will also command Hewie to do things like grab items that Fiona normally couldn't reach on her own, climb into small spaces, or go to a certain area. And then there's tilting down, which will cause Hewie to stop attacking, and when an enemy isn't present, will call Hewie to your side if he's away. Tilting left will have Fiona scold Hewie for not listening to a command. I honestly feel so bad whenever I have to use this one, but there's plenty of times during the beginning when Hewie isn't as obedient where I've had to use this. And I'll pick this option any day of the week as opposed to the other alternative. And finally, tilting right does the best thing in this whole game.
Good boy.
This is it. This is the review now. I'm doing this forever. Oh, and one last thing I almost forgot to mention is pressing down on the thumbstick will tell Hewie to sit. This can be useful if you want to tackle an area on your own, or if you need to solve puzzles that involve stepping on switches. Something to keep in mind is while Hewie can defend Fiona from attackers and buy her some time to get away, this isn't something that should be used constantly. Just like Fiona, Hewie has his own health, and if he gets thrown around or damaged too much, he'll lay on the ground motionless, unable to help you unless you heal him with food. Plus, I mean, could you really live with yourself knowing that you let this happen to such a good boy? Something else you can do as well is increase Hewie's friendliness with Fiona by doing things such as giving him food that makes him happy, making sure he doesn't die, and playing with him. I really appreciate how the developers didn't make Hewie just another mechanic that Fiona could defend herself with, and the player can actually form a genuine friendship with the dog depending on how much effort they put in. It really makes you feel the connection to these characters and how they're trying to protect each other. Before we get to the insane plot of this game, let's quickly go over what you'll be doing and how this game plays. The game takes place in multiple locations throughout Belly Castle, complete with set pieces both gorgeous and terrifying to accompany you. Through puzzle solving, exploration, and outrunning your killers, the end goal is the same. Find a way out of this castle and escape this insane cast of characters. When you're not busy trying to find the nearest hiding spot, the majority of the game is spent trying to figure out how to unlock rooms to advance your way further into the castle. This is done through a variety of different puzzles you'll need to solve that are all honestly really varied and never leave the gameplay feeling boring. They try all kinds of interesting things such as light puzzles, deciphering patterns in order to unlock doors. Some of my favorite puzzles to solve though are the ones where you need Hewie to help you. And I'm not just talking about the puzzles where you need two people to stand on switches to activate something. No, there's a few times in the game where you have a path that lays before you, but in order to know where to walk or which area to step on, you need Hewie to guide you, who has that keen sense of smell that can lead us to safety. It's a really clever way to use a dog companion since he has advantages that humans normally don't. I mean, without the help of Hewie, you take a wrong step, which leads to plummeting to your death. That's something else I really admired about this game. Sometimes, it's not just the Stalkers you have to worry about killing you. There's also plenty of traps in this game that will go off if you do a puzzle incorrectly or mess up too many times. Take for example this doll room. While already being creepy on its own for having all these dolls pinned to the wall, if you walk across this rug without having Hewie sit on a switch to disable the trap, this happens. Or there's one of the early puzzles I mentioned where you need Hewie to show you the way. If he's not with you and you do this on your own and mess up 3 times, this happens. These are just a couple examples, but there's so many things like this in this game that will punish the player for not completing a puzzle correctly. And while dying on its own sucks enough, if you forgot to save, or if you saved at a clock that's far away from where you were when you did this puzzle, that means having to go all the way back and trying again, hoping you get it right. And some of these puzzles are really difficult. I know I was stuck on some for longer than I'd like to admit. Something else I like to gush about real quick that I think the game does really well is the setting. For Haunting Ground being a PlayStation 2 game, you have to admit, the graphics still hold up really well. The castle is designed in a way that really gives it scale and personality and makes it feel like this huge, inescapable fortress. A lot of this game's setting and lore is based on alchemy, so some of the items you can pick up are things like medallions, where you can attempt to craft useful items that will aid Fiona using this alchemical tree system. And there's also crystals, which all have different effects and can be useful in warding off enemies. Something else I found really charming in this game too is that the save points take the form of old clocks. They did a really good job establishing what kind of feel they wanted the setting to be. I could honestly wander around this castle for hours. I mean, that is if I wasn't being chased around by giant ogre men. Now that we covered what we'll be doing and how we control Hewie, let's take a moment to talk about Fiona herself. Like I mentioned earlier, this game is less about fighting your pursuers and more about avoiding them at all costs. I think a lot of people criticize the way Fiona plays in this game and view her as a damsel in distress type character. And while I originally thought that myself, I eventually looked at it from a different perspective. Fiona was in a car accident, abducted, forced to live in this castle, and is now being pursued by crazy people for God knows what reason. She was forced into a vulnerable situation where she's trapped, taken away from everything she knows. I feel like if this was me, it would be hard for me to think rationally too when all this is happening. So, given all this information, it honestly makes sense as to why she'd be afraid to fight back. And that being said, she's not completely useless. She can kick, she can craft items to stun enemies, she can outwit them. While she's not the bravest, there's no doubt she's intelligent. That being said, I do agree that the panic system can be really annoying and cumbersome in this game. Let me explain. So unlike Resident Evil, you don't really have a health bar you manage in this game. And while you can take damage, it's not really your health that's taking damage. When Fiona is put in a stressful situation, takes damage from an enemy, or is being pursued, her sanity will start to decrease. And the longer Fiona is under stress, the more the screen becomes discolored and the audio quality gets distorted. And if you let her stress build too much, Fiona will let out a scream, sending her into full panic mode, which not only attracts the killer, but causes her to fall over and stumble every few steps, making it hard to get away. This is not only annoying because it hurts to look at, but it's also really frustrating to have happen while being chased because it feels like you have no control over Fiona. During this, there's so many times that Fiona might bump into objects in tight spaces or not go exactly where you want her to, and this can result in multiple game overs. God, and this especially sucks when the game locks you into a chase sequence where you haven't saved in a while, meaning you have to go all the way back where you last started. Look, I appreciate how much they try to make this mechanic tie into the character's personality, but it could definitely be much better. I'm just not really a fan of mechanics that hinder gameplay, especially when the player doesn't have control over what's happening. But something I do appreciate is the way they play with subtle jump scares by having it affect her sanity. This can take the form of loud noises coming from the TV, or bugs crawling out of the wall, or these blue orbs you have to avoid called luminescence, where if you touch them, they can make Fiona panic. However annoying this may be, luckily you can do something about it. When you see Fiona's stress start to rise, you can use an item called Lavender, which is used to calm Fiona's nerves. But now it's time to talk about my personal favorite part of this whole entire game. The Stalkers. There's a lot of things done right in this game, but the way the Stalkers behave, their different methods of pursuing Fiona apart from each other, their designs, just everything about it is so well done. You don't fight multiple enemies at once in this game. For every chapter, your only worry is this one singular enemy who is hellbent on hunting you down for their own reasons. The way this is handled puts constant anxiety and pressure on the player. You could be in the middle of solving a puzzle or finding your way around, but the thought is always there, just wondering when the killer is going to show up or when you're going to bump into them. How much time do you have left before you have to make a break for it? And this is really done in a clever way with both audio cues and the doors. You see, when going from room to room, the game doesn't have your standard Resident Evil door transitions. Instead, you can open and close doors to gain access into other rooms and buy yourself a few seconds of time when running away. However, when the doors are open, you can't see into them. It's just pitch black, cutting off all knowledge of what's in the other room. The way you know you're safe in this game is when the standard ambient music plays. But when a stalker is near, everything goes dead quiet, and Hewie begins to growl. And then, you eventually hear footsteps. And when you pair that with the darkness of the doors, you get this. Isn't that terrifying? I also really like how each stalker gets their own theme song to accompany them as well. For example, Dipilodos gets this really creepy whining music that gets faster if he's near, or slower when he's farther away. Daniela has this broken up techno theme with really distorted sounding lyrics. And I don't even know how to describe Ricardo's theme. It's just fucking terrifying. But despite how scary the situation can be at first and how intimidating they are, the scariness can die down really quickly and just become overall annoying after a while. This is especially true when you're in the middle of solving a puzzle and you hear those same footsteps nearby, which makes you have to drop everything, run and hide in hopes that they go away, and run all the way back to where you were to finish it. Take this example from my playthrough where I was in the middle of doing something, and big Mr. Ogreman came down here to mess things up. I couldn't even climb the ladder without him knocking me off. Dude, seriously? But in a weird twist of fate, he randomly decided to climb back up the ladder and leave? Okay. Bye. The point is, when you're trying to progress and figure out how to solve a puzzle, this can get really annoying and will hinder your progress. Okay, so we've covered characters, gameplay, and enemies, so now it's finally time to talk about the story. So I know normally I recommend playing these games for yourselves if you don't want the story spoiled, and usually the games I play are affordable, but in this case... So, I'm not gonna lie, the story for this game is a bit messy and convoluted and very uncomfortable in a lot of spots, but I'm going to do my best to sum it up as best I can. So as we discovered earlier on, Fiona's parents were killed in the car crash, which resulted in Fiona being captured and held prisoner in Belly Castle, to which she is the heir of. But as we find out, the people of this castle want Fiona for more sinister reasons than they're letting on. You see, eventually in the game, it's later revealed that Fiona has inherited something called the Azoth, this all-powerful life essence that's seen as a resource to be harnessed and used for power. In the first part of the game where Dipilodos is the stalker, you can find documents that reference the Azoth. It seems like something that everyone's after in this castle, and a subject that a lot of research was dedicated to. You can even stumble across this one cutscene in the first part of the game, where you see Ricardo is interrogating Daniela, demanding to know where the lord of the castle is. Man, and I thought I had family issues. Essentially, each stalker is out to get Fiona and use the Azoth for their own personal reasons. However, in the case of Dipilodos, as you saw earlier, his mind is too infantile to comprehend any of that. He's just more so this big, brutish child who doesn't know any better and sees Fiona as this big dolly to play with. But after defeating him later on in the boss fight, you then meet Daniela, that maid from earlier, who creepily stops Fiona from progressing further after getting a key and tells her that dinner is ready.
Dinner is served, miss.
While Fiona eats her meal, Daniela tells Fiona how her creator made her into the perfect woman. However, she can't experience emotion, pain, or pleasure. Almost kind of like she's this lifeless doll.
I'm not complete.
You ever just have an existential crisis over soup? Because if that's not a mood, I don't know what is. But feeling sick to her stomach after the food, Fiona passes out. She reawakens in her room again, but this time with Daniela's hand running across her body.
I am not complete.
Yeah, I heard you the first time. Can you get out of my room, please? You gonna be okay there? Oh god, what's happening? Okay, she's officially lost it. I'm out of here. To me, Daniela is by far the scariest character in this whole game. During this part, she becomes unstable, unhinged. She becomes this emotionless killing machine who wants to kill you at any cost because you're what she considers a complete woman. But the way they use her is so haunting. In some parts, when she's not chasing you, you can see her cleaning and acting completely normal like nothing happened and she didn't just try to kill you.
Miss, it's cleaning time now.
She freaks out and screams like an insane person when she sees herself in the mirror, and even sometimes when she's chasing you, she'll stop and maniacally laugh and it almost looks like she's short-circuiting or something. Everything about her is just so well done. You eventually find out during a later encounter with her that she also seeks the Azoth in Fiona, hoping that by gaining it, it will make her a complete woman. This ends in a boss fight where you have to complete a puzzle while you order Hewie to attack her. The fight ends with Daniela screaming and the glass from the ceiling above slicing through her chest, finally ending the chase. It's after this that we meet our third stalker and things start to get really weird. After obtaining the key from our fight with Daniela, Fiona makes her way into the basement to a different part of the castle that we haven't seen yet. This area is filled with test tubes, strange objects, and failed pale humanoid creations that just stand there and mumble unintelligible words or just do really strange things. I found this one licking the floor. Gross. But we eventually find out that our third stalker is none other than Ricardo, the hooded man who introduced himself earlier as the keeper of the castle. Only this time he decides playtime is over and pulls out the Glock. Oh geez, Ricardo is by far the most aggressive pursuer in this game. He can one-shot you at a far distance and can run really fast. He's definitely the one I had the hardest time losing in a chase. Eventually, after you make it outside the castle and get chased down, Ricardo reveals that Fiona inherited her father's Azoth, and that her father is actually a clone of Ricardo. Yeah, pretty confusing stuff. I'm not sure I entirely get it either.
You are about to give birth to me all over again.
Excuse me? I'm about to what now? After passing out, we wake up in the water tower, where we have to find a way to the top, all while avoiding Ricardo, who's now invisible. After reaching the top and solving this really cool planet puzzle, we engage in a final showdown with Ricardo, who meets his inevitable demise by falling off a cliff. Birth that, bitch. If you want to understand his reasoning for hunting down Fiona, basically from what I researched, apparently Ricardo was created without the Azoth in him, resulting in him aging faster than his brother. So to try to stagnate this, he captures wild animals and tries to extract the Azoth from them, which is why we saw Hewie captured at the beginning of the game. So because he doesn't have any Azoth naturally, his plan is to capture Fiona and make her a surrogate of sorts to rebirth a clone of him, since she has the Azoth and that will somehow make him complete. Yeah, I don't know, this game is pretty out there. After defeating Ricardo, Fiona makes her way across a bridge and into this towering stone fortress. Something I didn't mention earlier is throughout the game, Fiona receives mysterious notes from someone trying to aid her named Lorenzo. We're not sure why, but for some reason he wants to see Fiona get out alive and escape Ricardo's clutches. Well, it's at this point in the game that we finally find out why and finally meet Lorenzo, who's this creepy, disheveled old man confined to a wheelchair. Through some dialogue, he reveals to us that he created Ricardo and Fiona's father, Ugo. He also complains about how the family felt betrayed when Fiona's father left the family and married her mother, but now that Fiona's here, she's all his. This results in a really disturbing chase scene where he just crawls on the floor after Fiona, and it's honestly terrifying. But that's okay, because he ends up getting what he deserves. Or so we think, because somehow not long after we think he's dead, we end up meeting Lorenzo in his youth, which I'm still not sure how that's possible. After cornering her, he tells Fiona he wants to take away the Azoth within her to ensure everlasting life.
I will now extract the Azoth latent in you.
God, what is with this game and saying the grossest lines imaginable? But this next part is pretty cool. You end up in this maze area with colored doors, enough to figure out which door is the right one to take based on the hints given to you. After this and some final puzzle solving, it's time to end this once and for all with one final showdown against Lorenzo, with the fight ending with him falling into a pit of lava. The fortress then shakes and crumbles around Fiona, giving her limited time to get out. But despite dying twice, this bastard still won't die, and emerges as a flaming skeleton, chasing down Fiona one last time in an attempt to stop her. Now that's dedication. Lorenzo finally falls to the floor and turns into a pile of ash, allowing Fiona to make her escape. With all that behind us and with Hewie by our side, we fling open the gates and finally make our escape. Oh hey cool, you get a final score. I wonder how I did. Let's see here. Dog beater? When did I beat my dog? And I'll pick this option any day of the week as opposed to the other alternative. I'm a disgrace to mankind and should be shunned forever. So the ending I got is just one of 5 you can unlock depending on if you met certain requirements or stipulations. Pretty much like the Silent Hill games. I'm not going to share all of them because I think it's fun if you try to figure it out for yourself. But one of my favorite endings I will share, and that's ending C. You can only unlock ending C if you've already beat the game one time before. To get this ending, and the boss fight with Debilitas, instead of killing him, have him knock down the chandelier which will make him retreat and stop bothering you. After that, make your way to his hidden shack where he'll beg for your forgiveness and give you a strange key. You can use this key in the bathroom area which will take you to this basement, where on the table you can obtain the castle gate key and a pair of metal boots. It's from here you can end the game and leave right away, which results in this hilarious cutscene of Lorenzo pleading Fiona to stay, realizing his mastered plan is foiled.
Don't go, Fiona. My life, my Azoth, Fiona.
Another cool thing about this game, much like older horror games from this era, is you can unlock costumes with different functionalities for both you and Hewie. I'm not really a fan of how over-sexualized a lot of the costumes are, especially knowing what Fiona went through. It just feels wrong. But my favorite costume you can get, which you can unlock in Ending C, is the amazing frog costume. Hey look, we match. Ribbit, bitch. Why would you wear any other outfit in this game? Completing the game also unlocks this bonus room where you can listen to music, check out the character models and concept art, check out some of the titles you've earned from completing the game. Well, thanks for rubbing it in, guys. You can even play this minigame where you play as Hewie and have to escort Fiona to different locations while defending her from some of the past stalkers we faced before. And god, it feels so good to finally get revenge and be able to bite these guys. And the final thing you can unlock in this game for completing it one time is hard mode, which is honestly interesting and isn't just difficult. There are some differences in this version, such as the stalkers having different outfits, and in the comment section of your journal, instead of Fiona's thoughts, this time you get to see Hewie's thoughts. I thought that was a nice touch. In this mode, Hewie can take a lot more damage, knocking him out sooner, health is a lot more scarce, and enemies hit way harder. So if you really enjoyed this game the first time around and want a challenge, I highly recommend checking this out. Honestly, there's a lot to love about this game. The set pieces are still gorgeous, even to this day for it being a game from the PS2 era. And this game introduces a lot of good ideas like the partner system that Fiona and Hewie have and how the stalkers behave and operate. The characters are memorable and terrifying. I especially love how each stalker has their own chase music. But no matter how pretty this picture is, I need to address the big black stain in the middle of it that I've been avoiding this whole review. The way Fiona is treated in this game is super uncomfortable. And maybe that was the point, but the terror itself doesn't come from the killers alone, but rather the thought of what they'll do to Fiona once they capture her. She's treated to things like being watched while she takes her clothes off, being felt up on by other characters, being threatened with forced pregnancy, which, by the way, is one of the bad endings you can unlock. And I didn't explicitly show it, and I'm not going to play it due to how graphic it sounds, but anytime Fiona is caught by a killer and gets a game over screen, you hear noises ranging from moaning, clothes tearing, and pleasurable noises, all of which are coming from the killer, not Fiona. I don't know, people might be able to explain this away and say, well, it's just the style of horror they chose, but something about it all just feels so wrong. And it's hard to feel like the developers took a female character being in a vulnerable position seriously, when some of the rewards for beating the game is giving her overly sexual clothing. Something about the implied rape and how they treated her just does not sit well with me. You could have the villain extract the Azoth from her in a way that's not predatory and doesn't make the player feel uncomfortable. I don't know, call me weak, but I just didn't agree with this choice at all. Especially when it's documented that they thought Fiona alone as a character wouldn't be good enough to sell the game, so they added in a dog companion just to make it justifiable. So that just tells me off the bat, it sounds like you had no faith in this character and then lessen her for just being female, and then take it a step further by making her as vulnerable as possible and use rape as a threat. I hope people understand where I'm coming from with this. Overall, I think the game is good and worth checking out for sure. Everybody should play this at least once, but I feel like this needed to be said. At the end of the day, I'm glad I picked this up, and even more glad that I've added yet another unique horror experience to the collection. And that was Haunting Ground, a very bizarre trip in what was the final stop in the Clock Tower series. This game was filled with a lot more lore than I was expecting. Way too much to fit into one single video, and if I did, this video would have been at least 2 hours long. But if you're really curious about how deep this rabbit hole goes, I've linked a website down below you can check out that references the characters, the lore, the world building. Trust me, this thing has about as much lore as Kingdom Hearts does. And that's saying something. And that's all the time I have for this video. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go contemplate everything I just witnessed over a bowl of soup. What am I doing with my life?